Hello, everyone. Before we approach the Aphrodisias Stadium, it will be good to give some general information about the city. Aphrodisias is located in the Karakasu district of Aydın province in the Aegean region of Türkiye. Named after Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty, Aphrodisias was an ancient city famous especially for the worship of Aphrodite during the Roman period. Today, it remains one of Turkey's most significant archaeological treasures, known for its remarkably well-preserved monumental structures. The mound upon which the theater was later built dates back to prehistoric settlements as early as the 5th millennium BC. In the 6th century BC, Aphrodisias was a small village, and the first Temple of Aphrodite was built during this era. This appearance changed in the 2nd century BC with the establishment of the grid-planned city. At this time, approximately 15,000 people lived in the city, spreading across an area of about 1 square kilometer. In the 1st century BC, Roman Emperor Augustus took Aphrodisias under his personal protection. The monuments standing today were mostly constructed during the 200 years that followed. This city was one of the foremost centers of the ancient age for architecture, art, sculpture, and worship. The Byzantine writer Stephanos dates the foundation of the city back to the 13th century BC. Founded as a Carian city in the southeast of the Karakasu district, Aphrodisias experienced its golden age during the Roman period. During this time, extraordinarily beautiful marble sculptures and structures were built, and an art school known as the Aphrodisian style developed. Archaeological research indicates that besides architecture and sculpture, studies were also conducted in the fields of medicine and economics. The main structural remains visible today include the bath built during the time of Emperor Hadrianus in the 2nd century AD, the agora with its large pool, the Temple of Aphrodite built in the 1st century BC, the stadium, the theater baths, the Odeon, the bishop's palace, and the philosophy school. Furthermore, various finds from Aphrodisias, especially sculptures, are exhibited in the local museum. Around the mid-4th century AD, the city was surrounded by walls. From the 6th century AD onwards, it began to lose its prosperity and importance. The Temple of Aphrodite was converted into a church. The city, which had shrunk to a small town, was completely abandoned in the 12th century. The city was taken over by the Turks during this period. The first excavation work here was carried out by the Frenchman Gaudin in 1904, but could not be sustained. Following its recognition by the famous photographer Ara Güler, excavation work began in the early 1960s and was led by Professor Dr. Kenan Tevfik Erim until his death in 1990, whose name became synonymous with the Aphrodisias excavations. Kenan Tevfik Erim's grave is located here. Now let's look at the stadium. It may be useful to give some general information about the history of the stadium. In the ancient Greek world, the word stadium, or stadion, referred to a unit of distance measurement, a foot race, and the place where the race was held and watched by spectators. Initially, stadia were simple, flat, rectangular tracks, sometimes built near natural hills so that spectators could clearly see the events. However, starting from the early 5th century BC, artificial embankments began to be created. Furthermore, a common feature, such as channels around the track to drain excess rainwater, was also implemented. For this purpose, the tracks were generally slightly sloped. The lengths of stadia were close to 200 meters. Seating was later carved into stones or added with marble. The seating area became more sophisticated, divided into sections to facilitate access, and, perhaps more importantly, to allow spectators to exit in an orderly manner. Some VIP seats on raised platforms, central locations, were a common feature. In stadia could reach up to 45,000. When it came to the Olympic Games, people came from all over Greece to enjoy the spectacles. As far as is known, the crowds gathered and sat together according to the region they came from. Young girls could attend the Olympics. The crowd participated in the events by cheering, both vocally and by throwing flowers or laurel leaves to the winner. There were prizes for the racers, but gaining fame and glory was also an important motivation. Some athletes continued to be remembered long after their deaths. Greek sporting events were closely linked to religion. Therefore, games were organized in religiously important places and sacred areas. Competitions held every 2 or 4 years and lasting for centuries were referred to as the Olympics. The first Olympics, held in honor of Zeus, was in 776 BC. Later, 3 more major Olympics began to be organized in different cities alongside the main one. Besides the 4 major festivals, many smaller festivals were held throughout the Greek land. The back walls of the stadia were planned as shops and storage areas to meet the needs of those attending the festivals. The stadion race was the length of a single track and was equivalent to today's 200-meter dash. For the first 13 Olympic Games, from 776 BC to 728 BC, the 200-meter race was the only event. Even when other competitions were added to the Olympic program, the stadion remained the first and most prestigious event. From 724 BC onwards, athletic events moved beyond 200 meters, increasing up to 4,000 meters. Additionally, races were sometimes held in armor or with a helmet and shield, and now we continue sharing information about the Aphrodisias Stadium, which we are currently observing. The Aphrodisias Stadium was built in the late 1st century AD. Along with the theater, it met the city's need for the highest capacity spectator buildings. Unlike typical Greek stadia, both ends of this stadium are closed. Measuring 270 meters by 60 meters, the stadium's 30 rows of marble seating have survived in excellent condition to the present day. The long sides were made slightly elliptical, and this practical solution allowed spectators to watch the events more comfortably. Spectators entered the stadium from the south side via monumental stairs facing the city. These stairs were aligned with the city's north-south grid-plan streets. In other words, the stadium was carefully planned as an integral part of the city. Competitors entered the stadium through tunnels running beneath the seating rows at the short ends. The Aphrodisias Stadium is both the best preserved and one of the largest among the ancient Greek stadia. It hosted traditional Greek athletic competitions such as running, long jump, wrestling, discus, and javelin throwing. However, events such as gladiator fights and wild animal contests, emphasis, were also held here as part of the regular festival programs honoring the Roman emperors. When traditional Greek games and nude athletic contests began to lose their importance towards the end of the ancient period, the eastern end of the building was converted into an amphitheater and arena specifically designed for Roman-style entertainment. Recent research indicates that the stadium's conversion to an amphitheater occurred in the late 5th century. Quite impressive seat reservation inscriptions carved into the marble on the seating rows have been preserved. These identified the reserved seats of various groups, such as the associations of tanners and jewelers, as well as wealthy men and women from Aphrodisias and nearby settlements like the Meander region. Spectators shaped their social and political relationships in the seating rows of this great public forum. The ancient human tradition of curiosity about social political status and its reflection in society. Now, I will attempt to present a brief segment from the competitions taking place here. The atmosphere is fantastic, the cheering is terrific, and the crowd is huge. Achilles, presiding over the games, announces the start of a boxing match. The famous boxer Candidianos knocked down his opponent Perseus with a punch to the chin. The match ended as soon as it began. The crowd is thrilled. And now it's time for the third match. A wrestling contest begins between Demetrios and Epictetos. It is a standing wrestling match. The wrestling continues for a long time, and unfortunately, the two competitors cannot win. The result, a draw. And now for the running race. We see three competitors, Odysseus, Aias, and Artemidorus. Sudden slowdown and emphasis. Artemidorus stepped on some ox dung on the ground, slipped, and fell. Odysseus took advantage of this opportunity and passed him. The prize goes to Odysseus. The gladiators are next. Two fighters are on the field armed with their weapons. Dramatic emphasis. We are watching an incredible, fierce fight. A reaction rises from the spectators. The situation is understood. The spectators are not willing to accept the death of one of the heroes and demand the prize be shared. Sixth competition is the heavy discus throw. The prize is a lump of raw iron. We see four competitors. The first competitor threw the discus so poorly that laughter rose from the spectators. Powerful and emphatic, Pol Pot passed all the competitors with a magnificent throw. The prize goes to Pol Pot's. Applause. After this brief reenactment, we continue to observe the views of the stadium. What we are seeing is the west end of the stadium. We are looking a little closer now. This tunnel we see is one of the tunnels through which the athletes entered, the West Tunnel. Now we look from the west direction towards the east direction. The walls seen here, the uppermost walls, are the remains of the walls built in the 4th century A.D. Unfortunately, we could not obtain clear information about the specific drains seen here. We look closely at the seating area of the stadium. The order, the meticulous workmanship, and the fact that the seating area has survived intact until today. It looks as though it was built only yesterday. It is exciting. We look closer at the West Tunnel. We are now seeing the interior of the West Tunnel. This tunnel was blocked when the walls were built around the city of Aphrodisias in the 4th century A.D., as the northern edge of the walls aligned with the stadium's boundary, closing the tunnel's entrance. We can now imagine that we are a competitor entering the stadium. And we look closely at the stadium. We watch the magnificent appearance of the stadium with interest. We have come to the end of another video. We experience the exciting atmosphere of the Aphrodisias Stadium together, tracing the footsteps of history. If you also want to access interesting content about the ancient civilizations of Anatolia and the wonderful places of Türkiye with us, stay tuned to our channel. We hope to meet you in new cultural discoveries. Do not forget to subscribe and like. Stay healthy.